Well, normally this would be the topic of the week. And as Taylor just said, it is almost an afterthought. We almost forgot to talk about this. We have a Fed open market committee meeting on Tuesday and Wednesday with a rate decision coming. Taylor, what's going on?
I think this is a bold statement. I'll throw it out there and I'll try to back it up. I think this is probably the most important Fed decision, Fed meeting that we've had in 40 years. And I'll back up that comment. And again, this is an afterthought. This was the last video we did because it's seemingly the least important right now. What's going on in the banking industry, which is just nuts.
Yeah, it's hard for me to say. It is certainly in the top 5, and you could be right. It may be the most important.
So yeah, so let me just give you the context as to why I say that. So you think about the last time we had meaningful inflation, it was in the 80s, and it was coming out of the 70s into the 80s.
Yeah, that's fair.
And so now this is the second time since then that we've had to wrangle in really meaningful inflation, and this is the first time in this Fed rate hike cycle that there is an absolute question mark where we don't know what they're going to do. Now, granted, we didn't know whether they were going to raise 25 or 50 or 50 or 75 at some prior meetings, but we don't know if they're going to raise or leave rates standard or steady at where they are right now. And I think this is the first time where the Fed actually has a decision to make. Are we going to raise or are we going to stop this rate hike cycle?
Yeah. So we're going to do what we always do. We're going to do the percentage game, which equals 100, and I'll go after you. So some people are calling for a cut this week. What are the chances that we actually have a cut of any type?
0.
What is the chances of 0 rate increase?
68.
What are the chances of 25?
My math, 32.
And then there's 0 chance of 50. Right.
Correct.
So you're 0. So you're 2-1, 0.
Correct.
I'll stay with what I did last week with Anna Kelly. So I'm 0 cut. I am 1% pause, 99% 25, and 0.50. Yep. I say that because I believe the Fed has to be able to show they can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Yep. Fight a two-front battle. Fight a two-front battle. Inflation and banking.
And they have different tools for here and different tools for there.
Correct.
They're not. So that's where I'm at. And let me be very clear. If they do 0, it's a bloodbath Wednesday afternoon, because the only reason they do 0 is because the market will say, holy shit, there's stuff we don't see. I think 0 is a disaster decision.
It's interesting. You can very easily play both sides of the coin, but I don't disagree with you. Most people say fundamentally 0 should be a positive for the market. The market fundamentally should go up on that.
Yeah, most of the time. We are not in most of the time.
I'm in agreement with you. I tend to agree with you. I don't have the level of conviction that you have, but I do think that if the Fed pauses after they have told us vehemently we're going to continue to take rates higher, people are going to sit back and go, oh boy, the Fed does not trust what's going on in the banking system right now. I totally agree with you on that. I don't have that level of conviction that you have that the market gets absolutely torched because of it, but it would not shock me.
Yeah. And the funny thing about this week, there's actually 3 things we talk about. The Fed rate increase is just one. The next is going to be, where should we go next? Let's go to his press conference.
Yep.
So I think the answer is he has two choices: be raise, but be a dove, which is, oh, by the way, this is the last, we're data dependent.
Yep.
We understand what's going on. We're not convinced about next time. It could be the end. That's where I think he goes. What you're saying, again, I'm translated, you can react. You're basically saying, we know what's going on. We're not going to do anything this time, but you can count on one next time. We're serious about inflation.
I think you're right there. I think that they don't know immediately what is the markets and banking system, more importantly's reaction to a movement in rates. And I think that they're scared that they have exposed the banks massively, and that if they continue to expose them, they're going to compound a problem and cause more regional banks to face liquidity concerns, as we've spoken about in the last video.
And as you know, the Fed has raised rates, and bond yields 10 years gone down.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Because
well,
again,
what's happened there is it's how many are forecasted to come in the future. No doubt about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because again, what I think we're seeing now is more and more people are calling rate cuts this year. So then the most important part of Wednesday for me is the dot plot. terminal rate, GDP growth, unemployment. These are all things. And again, I think the Fed's doing another version because historically speaking, they do the dot plot 2 weeks prior, which if you do the math would have been pre Silicon Valley Bank. I'm guessing they got a do-over. So what do you think? What do you think? What do you think the terminal rate is?
we got a 75 basis point swing in terminal rates. Well,
No,
I guess
it's
not
like,
in terminal rates, but we've gotten
expectations.
Yes, that's I guess the better way of putting
so
it.
So the terminal rate peaked at 6.
Correct.
After the strong Tuesday, Congress tongue lashing.
Yep.
And it was dead by Saturday.
Correct. Yep.
It was under 5.
And that's why the 2-year went like this. And there was again 12 standard deviation event. 12 standard deviation. You said in the last episode, 1 in 300 million. Yeah. 2 times less likely to happen than
winning the
lottery.
It's wild to think about. So yeah, I think so. There's really a lot in this. So we're going to go to terminal rate first. Can you see at any time the terminal rate being over 5% this year? Because people are calling 6.
No. So to be clear though, terminal rate at 5% is 1 more rate hike from here.
Yes, correct.
And so I to your point, I think you put my words perfectly after you kind of spun them, but I'm saying that in a good way. Like your dovish rate hike or hawkish no rate hike, I think is put perfectly, because I think that's absolutely what's going to happen. I do think that, and Steve Leisman commented this on CNBC this morning, who I love Steve Leisman. I think he's one of the best economists there are. Anyway, he said, listen, one of the things the Fed is going to struggle with if they don't raise rates, and you made this point before too, is that there is a separation of things that are going on. Like the one side is the banking issue that we have, but the other side is we still have an inflationary issue. Now, I think what happens due to your comments on the last episode or the one before on the liquidity is that liquidity drying up will bring down inflation. I think the Fed realizes.
Oh, no question. I think a recession. 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, pre-SVB, I thought a recession would be Q1 of 24. I've said on record the recession started whatever that day was, March 13th, March 11th, whatever. We won't see it till Q2. But you broke the consumer. The consumer's broken. And
you know what was interesting is that basically simultaneously happened with our first pickup of unemployment.
It did.
Like those aren't always necessarily coincidental things. One thing kind of leads to another. And what you have here is both of them are lagging economic indicators, right? Both those happen because of something else happening in the economy. Labor is generally the last thing to play out. But when you see the financial system start to seize up, that comes at the end as well. So those are, again, they might be coincidental, but the underlying factors that drive them are very similar. And so it shouldn't necessarily be seen as, oh, that was just random. I don't necessarily think that should be the case.
I think, again, I don't think Powell wants anybody to see this, but I think Powell behind closed doors give him truth serum. He's like, beating inflation just got easier.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did.
It just got easier. Oh, it did.
And he doesn't have to be the bearer of bad news to say, I'm going to continue to take rates higher and cause unemployment to go up and have Elizabeth Warren breathing down my neck this whole time. Not that
now he
just
sits tight. I on record, he gives us another quarter and then he pauses. Let me ask you this question. I actually asked my audience the other day. I gave them 3 options and we'll give them to you. First rate cut by July 31st. First rate cut by December 31st, or first rate cut in 2024? What do you got?
So I will go on record also, and you can attest to this, that I have never been in a no recession is coming camp. I have been staunch in my fact that recession's coming. Admittedly, I was too early. I thought recession would start last year, if you recall.
Yep.
But I did not get on that bandwagon in January of we're going to hit this no landing or soft landing or whatever. No. So, but with that, you would think I would say July 31st. I don't think it comes that quick. I don't think we get a rate hike until this, or I'm sorry, a rate cut until December.
Well, sometime between July and December.
Yeah, sometime between those 2 meetings, or not 2 meetings,
okay.
the variable time there.
Yeah, you have 5 months, I guess. July, 7, 12, 5 months.
What's your take?
24.
24.
Yeah. Okay. But again, so there's a couple of things that could make that come early. And I've kind of said them, but let me rewind the clock. I believe inflation just got easier. I've always said housing will roll over the way it's calculated, and that rolls over by July or August. I believe the consumer broke. I believe the consumer can cause a recession. There is a chance that those two compounding forces come together. And because to my opinion, inflation has to get sub 3 for him to cut. I don't see, when I look at the math and the base effect and all that goes in there, I don't see that happening until Q1. I think happening in Q1's a layup or maybe a free throw, to, again, a sports analogy. So it's, it's maybe Steph Curry at the free throw line. So 92% chance.
Right.
I just think that's how the math works.
Yep.
It could happen in Q4, but I don't think so.
So I think your logic is very sound, and I actually tend to agree with your direction on inflation or disinflation and how quickly we get down to that. I think that the thing that might be the fly in the ointment of that theory is if inflation starts to drop precipitously, and therefore they can see the direction of things playing out, and they go, okay, rate of change is massively
What's
negative
the
right
number
now.
they have to see? Because clearly it's not 6. Is it
Yeah,
5?
clearly it's not
Is it
6.
4? Is it 3?
Gosh, I don't know.
3.5?
They can't do anything without seeing 4. That's for sure. It is my opinion.
There you go. Yeah.
And again, I think that rate of change needs to happen precipitously, and then congruently, you have to have a meaningful pickup in unemployment on the other side.
Yeah.
For that to play out.
Unemployment, the last time I think it was reported, was 3.6, up from 3.4.
Correct.
So again, let's say we get inflation sub 3.5, kind of split the difference. We get an unemployment spike, raise, growth, whatever, to 5.1. You could see a cut there.
Yeah, we're kind of splitting hairs here. I totally get that. But that's fine. And listen, like, without this banking crisis, the banking crisis might be too strong of a word right now, but a potential banking.
It's not.
Okay. Thank you for backing me up on that, because I get beaten up when I say that sometimes.
It is a banking crisis. Yes.
The banking crisis.
The consumer is losing faith in banks. To my knowledge, that is a banking crisis.
Totally agree. So, and I will use that next time, because that's a well put response. But this is a function of a weakening consumer to begin with. So this is not, this may amplify the recession or cause it to be there more quickly. But we were directionally moving there anyway. People are seeing depletion of savings, the economy's slowing, like all of these factors are playing into inflation being so rampant still, and wage growth not picking up or not keeping up with. Let me give a stat before I screw it up. Wage growth has not kept up with inflation for 23 straight months. Right. That can't continue and have people continue to spend money to drive on the economy. Like, all of these things were causing a recession to likely come anyway. And then it caused this crack to happen in the banking system along the way. That's going to bring it on more quickly and amplify the downside.
Couldn't agree more. You're doing a lot of great stuff on Instagram and TikTok.
We don't always agree, by the way.
No, we don't.
So I appreciate that.
No, I do too. Where should people follow you?
Yeah, thanks so much. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Life Goal Investments. We do different stuff on both, so it's worth following on both if you have it.
Awesome.